Well, good morning, everyone. It's almost midday. Welcome to another webcast from the Folly of Star Foundation's Yoda Guy Moving Museum here in St. Martin in the Caribbean. I'm Nick Maley, also known as that Yoda Guy, creature effects designer who worked on Yoda and 60 other movies, author, artist, motivational speaker sometimes, and StarNet webcaster. And today's video features two of the Folly of Star Foundation's greatest contributors and supporters. We have Disneyland costumer, cosplayer, and My Universe Award winner, Cynthia Kirkland, and BBC personality, documentary maker, and author David Whiteley. You know, Cynthia has 17 years experience as a cosplayer, and working with Disneyland has experience of the variety, versatility, and pitfalls of 3D printing. And she's going to share that with us in detail today in this in-depth introduction to 3D printing. It helps encourage creative minds to explore new techniques, which is exactly what the Folly of Star Foundation is all about. And every Sunday, we webcast about creative techniques or outstanding personalities for our patrons, our supporters, and creative minds everywhere. So let's get on with it. To be Cynthia, our friend Cynthia Kirkland, who is a great supporter of our event here. She brings us people for panels, and she's great in her own right, and very, very knowledgeable in many aspects of what she does. And so we're going to talk to her about 3D printing, and I'm going to bring on my good friend David Whiteley from the BBC, who's sitting at home and growing a beard.
Well, hello, Nick. Hi, Cynthia. I thought that I would try an attempt to grow something as impressive as you. Maybe kind of going a bit Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it hasn't really kind of worked. It's very grey under here. So no, I don't think I'll last very long.
I think that, you know, most people when they grow a beard, they get to look old and old-fashioned. You somehow seem to look younger than you did.
Oh, you flatterer.
So I'm going to step out, and I'm going to leave it to you guys to take it away.
All right.
Well, Cynthia, it's great to see you again. I'm just going to, well, you've got a fabulous character behind you, the armorer from The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And, a bit about you and what you do. Obviously, you know, Cynthia works for Disney, loads and loads of work for Disney properties around the world, creating or recreating wonderful costumes that we all know and love from Star Wars and Marvel, all that kind of stuff. But since connecting with Cynthia on Facebook, pretty much every day I'd say I go to my timeline and I see yet another amazing creation or part of the creation kind of in the works. So Cynthia, welcome to the show, and that Nick's brilliantly put on again for us. Tell us how you started out in cosplay and how you started out as a seamstress before we go into how to do things.
Okay. So I started out, honestly, I started out in cosplay almost 17 years ago. That was kind of my introduction into costuming and seamstress work and things like that. I grew up loving comic books, and when I first saw, like, you know, my first convention in a magazine, I was literally just like, that looks really cool. I want to go there. People dress up. That sounds great. And from there, I knew nothing about sewing. And then now, just from really falling in love with the costuming and creating your own character through those outfits. Now I kind of kept that passion going and now work for Disney professionally. And so now I never thought that I'd be making costumes for a full-time job now, just because starting out, you just go to an event dressed up as X-Men or whatever was popular at the time. So it's kind of a wild transition when people always ask, like, how did you get started in cosplay and costuming? It's so wild.
But isn't it amazing how your passion has led to your career, your profession? So obviously something you love doing and love being involved with, and it's evolved over the years, and now here you are doing it professionally. It must be quite a thrill, and also an inspiration for other people watching to know that they can do the same kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I think that's the biggest motivation to disseminate the knowledge and information, is just to inspire like the next generation of people, because to be honest, I don't think I really had like that kind of when I started. So I felt lost in many aspects of trying to transition into a career. But, now I think we have so much social media connection and so many resources to pursue. And now, honestly, a lot of professional programs and like film and television, as well as, like where I work for Disney Live Entertainment, they are starting to pull a lot more from people who come from like a more cosplay background, because they come in with having knowledge of like, build techniques and a lot of, baseline understanding of costumes.
Exactly, and the attention to detail. I know we've touched on this in the past with another online con. Is that the attention to detail has to be spot on, and that's obviously why people like Disney come to cosplayers, because they're so passionate. They're so obviously you have to become very, very transfixed on what you're doing, because other fans will spot if anything's wrong.
Oh yes, you're totally right about that. I think it's just they have a level of passion for the build process that, of course, like companies are looking for. They're looking for people who have that level of just literal focus and passion and drive to create the next level of costume making. I mean, that's why, transitioning from here, that's why now 3D printing is becoming so much more ubiquitous in costuming. It's just because bringing in more and more knowledge and more technology into costuming is really just expanding and blowing up the costume world right now. It's pretty incredible thinking that at this point you can 3D print fabric, and we'll talk later about that in this little episode. But yeah, it's pretty incredible to think at this point, like, it's really changing the game.
Totally. I mean, so let's talk about 3D printing. You brilliantly brought it into the conversation. Good transition. So, if somebody was starting out for the first time, Cynthia, and they saw your creations, how would they go about doing 3D printing? What would your recommendation be?
I would recommend going, if they're just wanting to start out. I would recommend going with a economical machine to start out with. I would say, honestly, don't even start out with resin printing from the get-go or anything difficult. Some people do. It's not against them. But a standard PLA Ender 3 printer will run you about a couple $100. And there are so many wonderful communities and resources.
Sorry, how much did you say it was?
It's about $200.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The whole kit, the machine is $200.
Yeah, the machine now you can get them for about $200. I would say probably $250, but $200. I mean, most of them you can find a pretty good sale. It's really cheap. It's super cheap now. I mean, that's one reason like that got me inspired to jump into it, was just like I said, I'm like this is cheaper than a sewing machine. This is ridiculous.
Now we've got lots of your images here, Cynthia, that I know you've brilliantly put together for us. So let's have a look at this. You've got obviously this is Wakanda. So talk us through the I mean, obviously the costumes in Black Panther, as with most of the Marvel films, are breathtaking. But particularly in Black Panther, I think, and some of these costumes here are just stunning, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. And I brought in this introductory image because this is a panel about costuming. And so I brought in the fact that Wakanda and the costume design for that by Ruth Carter, a lot of it actually incorporated 3D printing, which is incredible. It was blending, of course, the technology and the very high-tech Afrofuturism environment of Wakanda. And Queen Ramonda here, her crown as well as the bolero she's wearing, it's all 3D printed lace, essentially. It's pretty incredible when you actually zoom in. All of that lace is 3D printed. And so when you actually see pieces like this in the world, like I think the application and the inspiration to start 3D printing, it is mind-blowing. And I actually saw this piece up close in LA a couple years ago because they won the Oscar. And it's just, the detail on it is incredible. Literally, what more can you ask for? And then next, we go into explaining, or at least visually explaining, how the applications are. So we already talked about, you have your model, which is Iron Man on the left. And I'll probably be talking a lot about Iron Man in this show, just because a lot of people, when they think 3D printing costumes, they're going to think about the Iron Man suit and things like that. So the left is the just rendering. It's not even the model. It's just the 3D rendering of the Iron suit. And then to the top right, we have a model piece, a piece of the armor that's actually modeled into a slicer program. And that's what this program is what the 3D printer is reading from. It's not actually reading from the render. And then the bottom right, you can see the actual armor that is printed. So it's pretty incredible. Like if you are a detail-oriented costumer, it's 3D printing, because you're really not going to get the symmetry, the accurateness that you're going to get with doing it by hand. And it's pretty incredible. I still love doing anything I can by hand because I'm very tactile. But for people who are easily frustrated as far as like trying to bring recreate a costume, and they get super frustrated because it's like, this isn't exactly what I see on paper. That's why a lot of people are resorting to 3D printers, is because they're like, I was just getting frustrated making it myself, and I'm just a more technologically driven person.
Yeah, so, but it's great with you because you can do both. You bring both to the table, because you've got that. You can, as you say, being a tactile person, you can work with materials with your hands, but also you have that technology as well, which you can mold the two together.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, I personally have an advantage just because I already understand costume building on a different level, as opposed to somebody who might be building a model. And it looks great. Like the Tony Stark model that we saw, it looks great. But sometimes I've experienced when you print a model, but perhaps they don't really understand, like, okay, one, somebody has to move in this. Two, where are my closures? Where are my attachments? Like, it's just, unless you kind of think about those things and how it's going to be worn later, you can build a great model, but is it usable? So, I come from both worlds.
Exactly.
And then this was just a fun image that I threw in just because this was kind of an armor panel. And so literally 3D printing, you can in the program, of course, you can scale things up, you can scale things down. And so a lot of people have just literally run with it. And they're like, fine, I can scale it down. I'm going to print stuff for my cat, for my guinea pig. And it's pretty incredible. Like, it's so fun.
No dog is going to mess with that cat. I tell you.
I know, right? That's what I'm saying. No dog's going to mess with that cat.
That's the toughest thing around in the neighborhood. Okay, so this is the printer, is it?
Yes, so this is the printer. The one on the left is the plastic PLA printer that I talked about earlier, and the one on the right is a resin printer. So right now you can get two basic types of printers to use in the home. A lot of people who do D&D and like miniatures and things like that, they'll pick the resin printer because it works very small scale and they can get super, super, super fine detail. And that's, that sounds great for any application. Unfortunately, the resin printer has a tiny, tiny print bed. It only goes up to maybe a 5x4 print bed. And so and anytime you're thinking about printing, you can only think about how large your print bed is, because that little nozzle that's drawing your design, it can't go off that print bed. That's what it's tracking. So yeah, so the resin printer can only print small scale designs. As you can see, they're only printing miniatures, like D&D miniatures with that, but you can get incredible detail. I use the one on the left, which is just the basic Ender 3. The most economical models on the market right now would be the Creality, which is your Ender 3, your CR10, and there are great communities for those to help get newbies started. And yeah, so
how much would these be to buy brand new then?
Oh, of course. The Ender 3 would be about, like I said, 200. Like if you find a good sale, 250 is normal price. So shelf price 250 for the one on the left. The Elegoo, the resin printer, those are actually becoming much more economical as well. So I think you can find the Elegoo Mars, which I researched because I'm interested as well, is probably the most economical for 2020. I think that one's $275 for the miniature printer. Like I said, if you like D&D or small things.
But as you said, if you're into this kind of thing, it's actually not prohibitive. The price is actually within people's reach, especially when we consider how much you spend on a sewing machine. Now, here we have Davy Jones.
Yeah, and so I brought in this model because this model is actually only this big. I mean, it's only about 3 inches tall, but the fact that the resin printer can get that super fine detail, and like I said, with the plastic printer, you're going to get those little lines and striations in it that you have to go back in and sand and fill later just to get it really smooth. That's the one disadvantage to the plastic printer, is that there's always going to be visible layers, so you're going to have to smooth it somehow. The resin printer gets super, super fine detail. And the way it works is on the left, as opposed to working from the print bed with the plastic, you're building up the plastic. The resin printer actually essentially dips into the resin bath and lifts, and there's a UV laser that essentially comes, and the resin is cured with UV, and so when the UV hits it, it's curing it, and the laser, honestly, it blows my mind. The laser knows essentially what design it needs to hit the goop at. It's literally what it is. When you watch it, it's just literally like goop. And so the laser comes, it hits it, and cures, like flash cures it. That's what it's doing. It's flash curing the goop into that design. And so it'll just keep doing that. It'll just dip, flash cure it, dip, flash cure it, until all the layers are coming down. It's pretty incredible.
It's like science fiction stuff in itself. The way these stuff work. So you obviously, traditionally you're working with material and stuff that you would sew, etc. But when was that first moment when you transitioned from just doing that to working with 3D printing?
I think it was just honestly seeing, because once again, working for the Disney Live Entertainment, we have a craft room where anything essentially that's not sewn on a sewing machine, it's made in this shop. It's the workshop or whatever. And so seeing them, or the technicians start to utilize 3D printing, and seeing how, honestly, once I understood that this was a technology that could be incorporated in any environment, it was so mobile and so useful, that I was like, honestly, Brandon, how much are these, like, normally? I was like, how much are these? And now 3D printing is so accessible and cheap. More and more people are starting to get them in their homes. That was kind of my first introduction, was just seeing how companies were starting to use 3D printing on a small scale, just to, do things that normally we would probably mold, or, take honestly much more time, material, technology to create a mold, or create a key mold, cast that, and then have a mold to continue creating that product. But now with 3D printing, we can just go in, create that model, and then once we have that model, we can just literally, like a copy machine, just print, as many as we have material for. Like it was pretty incredible, taking out a lot of labor and a lot of time and material aspects out of that.
Yeah, as you say, it's the versatility of 3D printing, but also the revolutionary as well, because in the past you'd have the laborious task of making a mold, and then from that you make whatever it is you need to be making. So how does it work then? So how does a 3D printer work? To someone like me, how does it explain to us?
A 3D printer is essentially the most baseline explanation of a 3D printer is honestly just visualize a hot glue gun in the way that everyone's used one, but you just insert the glue stick and it kind of melts and extrudes out of the nozzle, and then you kind of can create or draw whatever adhesive design you need to put two pieces together. Well, 3D printing actually uses the same idea, as far as you have a roll of plastic in the same way you would have a glue stick. And so the plastic filament will just be fed through the machine, and as it melts, the nozzle is extruding the plastic as it's moving, and that's what's creating the design on a level bed. So it has, from the computer program, of course, these various designs or levels that it's following and tracking, and the program slices, sorry, I don't know if it's actually able to see it, but anytime you have a 3D print, there's always going to be like little striations in that. So that's actually kind of the tracking that the machine is following as it's going around. So it's just building from the ground up, like this, through this program, and extruding and heating plastic as it goes. So that's literally all it is. It's actually pretty simple in theory. The application of it is very, very simple. It's just really the setup, the maintenance, and the model making that's probably the most laborious, or most like tedious, or not tedious, but what's that word? Scary for most people. But yeah, so that is literally a 3D printer. It literally just spits out plastic into a design.
But you've got to put that design in. So you've either got to come with something bespoke, something original, something that you've created, or something that exists in the world already. So can you scan something and then it recreates that?
Oh, definitely. You can definitely. You can scan things and create the model that way. That's actually the most easiest and, well, the easiest and most effective way to do that. A lot of people will honestly, thinking about it in a film application, you can create the body scan of the actor. And then once you have that body scan, you have the model to build your armor or accessories off of. So that's another application for it. It's just actually having those kind of modeling programs, but there are many, many different modeling programs we'll discuss later, as far as like their uses and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so let's talk about the uses then, because we've got this fabulous creation behind you there, Cynthia, of the armor in the Mandalorian, and I must admit, if you look at it quickly, and I did look at it quickly, you're scrolling through stuff on Facebook or what have you, it looked like it was the real thing. But of course,
wow!
It's plastic, isn't it? So let's talk through some of the processes that you would go through now. So how did you go about making that behind you?
This behind me, this one was actually this was a model that I was actually able to purchase. A lot of makers there's 3D printers have essentially specific skills, in a sense. Like, you can be exclusively a printer, or a lot of people have double roles as a printer and a model maker. So they're the ones creating kind of the patterns for everyone else to follow. And so luckily enough, with the amazing popularity of The Mandalorian, that was actually a model that was available for purchase from a third-party company. And so you find that quite a bit. So luckily, if you can find a model, you know, of course, half of your work is done. And so for the armor, I had the model, but my print bed actually is smaller than what they created. So I personally have to go in and adjust this model in the program to create it accessible or usable for my personal print bed, because I just have a small home one. And you can buy print beds that can create the helmet in one go, like large format. But I have to go in and actually like tweak the model, slice the model, et cetera, to create the raw helmet behind me. Now, these clasps as well are 3D printed. And those are 3D printed and finished. This is a raw one it's not been primed or anything. Like, you can still see the striations. But yeah, so essentially, that's kind of what we're working from. This would be the finished product once the helmet is all painted. All of the imperfections would be gone. But as you can see, the helmet itself, it has a couple different colors because I had to change. I didn't have enough filament just to finish it in one color. But that's kind of the amazing thing about 3D printing, is that it really is a puzzle. When you go and after you've printed each individual piece, you can go in and actually build it. So that's the other part, I think, of 3D printing that people are maybe unfamiliar with, is kind of the
building blocks, I suppose, the different parts of
it. Yeah.
Because exactly. the computer will do a lot of the hard work for you and kind of assemble it. Whereas, you know, if you had to think about that as a human being, you think, well, how does this go together? But of course, the computer is working from a template, it's working from a program. And
exactly.
It knows how to construct it and knows how to put it together.
The funny thing is, there really is no magic tutorial to start 3D printing. I think most people want to jump in, but you're going to be frustrated starting out. I was certainly frustrated. My roommate, I was about to throw my printer out the window quite a few times. But I think it's just a matter of that you have to not let that get you intimidated. And you just have to kind of wade your way through and find good, experienced people and resources to help answer your questions along the way, because there's no way, honestly, I don't know any printer that has pretty much done it on their own, in a sense. I have a wonderful resource here in Orlando, a makerspace here. And so anytime I have an issue that I'm unsure of, like whether it's technology, like tech-wise, like replacing certain machine parts or whatever, I can go to the Orlando makerspace, Andy, and I can ask him like, hey, like, you know, what do I have to do? So that's kind of what it is. It's just more like the way to start printing is literally find a good community, get an economical machine, and really just jump in. There's really no other way.
Trial and error. Can you remember the very first thing that you created, Cynthia, with your own 3D printer?
Oh, I mean, honestly, I honestly didn't start printing personally until, what was it? I think when printing for work, it's mostly like little tiny parts, machine parts and brackets that might break on like a stormtrooper or something like that. So those were like the first prints that I was exposed to, was just tiny little hinges or brackets, and which is amazing that you can literally just print machine parts on a 3D printer and then, you know, utilize them in everyday home accessories or armor or whatever. But me personally, I printed a Baby Yoda. That was my first print.
Who can blame you?
That was the only, I literally, as soon as I bought it, I'm like, this is the only reason I bought it, guys. Like, I just wanted a Baby Yoda.
It took so long for them to actually create Baby Yoda and get it out into the, you know, on the market, that everybody was probably doing that. As soon as you got a 3D printer, people would make their own Baby Yoda.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, because it took them so long to get the merchandise out. Everyone on Etsy or the community was literally creating their own models and printing. Like, it was just more like, I need to have this right now. It's so cute.
Everybody instantly fell in love with Baby Yoda. I imagine the sale of 3D printers went through the roof in that first episode of The Mandalorian.
I think so. I can't tell you how many people I have like met or come across that are literally just like, what was your first, or like their first printer, and they're like, this is my first print, and it's like, I can see a Baby Yoda forming, and I'm like, I see you.
See it being born, you know, see Baby Yoda being created. So this is the one you work with mostly, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the one I work with most, and as you can see, I just wanted to bring in the basic printer has a lot of maintenance. These are all replacement parts that I've had to deal with. And this model, I think I've only had after the first like few months, you're going to have to start being a mechanic to these little machines. They're amazing, but they do require a lot of upkeep because you're going to want to keep printing and keep printing and keep running it. So you have, so that's kind of why I brought this, and I'm not really sure if there are any questions about it, but the replacement parts you can buy individually. Like I've had to replace so many nozzles. I've had to replace the thermometer or the thermistor on it just because the temperature gauge will just wear out over time. The wires.
I think what's interesting what you're saying is that there's such communities now with 3D printing, because it's such a young technology, isn't it? And yet I think that a lot of people are now embracing it. And getting involved. So there's communities on Facebook, on YouTube, what have you, where you'll be able to kind of discuss these things. Because I remember when it first came out, it was mind blowing, really. And now people can have them in their homes. So here's a much larger model.
Yeah, and that was another thing. Like literally talking previously about really the way that people say the sky is the limit. The size of your print bed is the limit. So literally people are literally building parts. Of course, it just blows my mind that now we're 3D printing boats and other like large scale applications. Granted, we were doing that before. I think, of course, 3D printing started in machine manufacturing and medical, and then it started to become just a hobbyist thing because it was becoming more accessible for people. And now it's kind of gone back into manufacturing the more like the technology evolves. But yeah, so you can get like, if you have the will and the way, you can literally create a printer that's like the size of a small room just to print. Like you're literally just like, I don't want to have to, IKEA my print together after I've printed it. I don't want any seams. I don't want any breaking points, because that's another thing. Like do have to worry about seams and breakages. Like if you have different pieces that you're putting together. So if you just want one solid print, but you just want to do it at a large scale, you can print a bed. And I mean, yeah, it's the sky's the limit.
Exactly. It's as long as the print bed is large enough, you can print what you like. But of course, that's going to be an expensive piece of kit. That's not going to be cheap, is it?
That is going to be a very expensive piece of kit. Yeah, I will say that you have to get a good Kickstarter backer on that one.
Yeah, someone's going to bankroll you on that one. Maybe some billionaire might like to come on and bankroll you for that. So the next one we got here, I know this is a lot of all the different types of material, the different types of plastic.
Yeah. And that's kind of also what's incredible is that there's just so many other, beyond the basic machine, there are so many other applications and uses you have for it. So PLA, the first one, is your basic plastic. It's the cheapest plastic. It's the most accessible. That's basically what people use because it's the easiest. ABS is a different type of plastic. It's more sturdy than PLA. PLA can be a little brittle. Even though PLA is reinforced.
You've just lost the helmet behind you. It's just popped off. The armor, she's
I mean, at least she's sturdy. I wonder if one of the cats knocked it off.
Yeah, it could have been. And you might need to do some repair work with one of these, with PLA, ABS.
I'm so glad I have all of these options for my repair.
The arm was decapitated live on the panel, which is very worrying.
She really was.
Oh
my God, I have to go back and watch that. That's hilarious. The armor. Yeah. Oh man, Mandos they can't remove their helmet. I don't know what to do. So anyway, ABS, even though the standard print has these, let me see, this is the skeleton of a print. So it has these tiny pores that it prints to create infrastructure inside of the print. But even then PLA can be pretty brittle. So that's why we go back to the ABS.
So it's PLA, pardon my ignorance here, Cynthia.
No, you're fine.
Is that simply plastic? Is that what PLA stands for, or is that?
It actually is an acronym, and I can't remember.
Sorry, I put you on the spot now. I apologize. Okay.
No, you're fine. All of these are essentially, I mean, well, I can't say all, but most of these are acronyms for the type of plastic. So PLA is the type of plastic, but I can't remember the acronym. So is ABS.
So ABS is more sturdy compared to PLA.
ABS is more sturdy. Unfortunately, you do need good ventilation for it, because it doesn't matter. All plastic, once it's heated, gives off some type of fume. PLA, it's non-toxic. ABS, slightly a little toxic fume. So you're gonna have to find a good ventilation. I think that's why a lot of people don't use the ABS, is because they're mostly using their printers in the home. So that is one thing to be aware of. You're gonna have to put it in your garage, and a lot of people, it's less convenient to use ABS because of that. It's also a little more difficult. You have to run the plastic at a higher temperature, and it can be a little more difficult to use. So it's not as user-friendly either. Yeah, so that's the difference. Nylon is actually more, it heats at a much higher temperature. That's mostly for cleaning your machine. I go in oftentimes if I get a clog because the plastic does that a lot. It might just build up or clog your machine because it's just not heating correctly. And so you have to go in with the nylon and kind of like fish it out or push it out. Right. So that's all nylon is. You can print with nylon. You can totally print with nylon, but most people, I don't really know anybody who does.
You're crazy, basically.
Yeah, I know. I mean, why would anyone do that? It's ridiculous.
Okay, so they're on to wood as well. Is that actual wood?
But I believe it's wood pulp. So it's a mixture of wood pulp. And so what it is it is still plastic, but there's wood pulp in it. So when it prints, it finishes similar to the grains of wood. So that's the best explanation I could give, but I could be totally wrong on that.
We'll get the effect of it looking like it's been cast.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Crystallized. What's that then?
This one, I don't know why they say crystallized. It's actually PETG, and that's actually what my personal group has been requested from a lot of medical workers and things like that. It's actually more easily sterilized for medical use or other applications. I believe it's actually more sturdy than the ABS. It could be equitable, but I believe it's more sturdy. But that's why it's often requested by manufacturers as well as medical. They'll use the PETG or crystallized. The properties of that plastic are able to withstand whatever sterilization process they need.
I know you've been brilliantly 3D printing, masks as well to kind of flatten the curve and keep it as safe as possible. So good on you for doing that. And is that is that the actual material you'd have used for that?
Yeah. I mean, this is just out of an example. Yeah, this is basically the very simplified version of the face shields that my group has been printing. And we honestly have been using PLA only because a lot of times it will withstand the basic alcohol solution bath. But for a surgical environment, the crystallized PLA or PETG can go through the autoclave. So that's like the crazy, anytime surgical tools are, whenever they're utilized or opened or exposed to the environment for the first time, they have to go through an autoclave, which I'm not exactly sure what that giant machine is, but it'll melt any other type of plastic essentially. So whatever properties they're using to sterilize in this giant vat machine thing that kind of pressurizes, that's what it is. It's like a pressure machine. So whatever that pressurizer does, only PETG really stands up to that.
Right. Okay. So that's why that's important. So dissolvable. I mean, I suppose the clues in the title with that.
Yeah, that was pretty self-explanatory. I think you just need a specialty nozzle for that, and that's kind of the other part of anytime you're working with a different plastic, you're probably going to have to rearrange your machine parts or get a new nozzle or et cetera on these. Each of them behaves differently, not only outside of the machine when finished, but inside of the machine as well. So anytime you're changing, when you're starting out, newbies, you have to research your plastic selection, because that's going to change how you're going to operate your printer. So that's kind of why, like, that is extremely important to understand the different types of plastic that you're going to be working with. So honestly, when you're starting out, only use PLA. And then once you kind of understand how to operate the machine, then you can get fancy and get all like, ooh.
They're a bit like a cocktail, put some more ingredients in. I put,
yeah, it's like that. Like, I mean, it really is just a cocktail. It's one big messy cocktail.
You've got to be like, you've got to do a Tom Cruise, and then you've got flexible at the end there. I take. Why would you use that?
Oh yeah, flexible is actually pretty incredible. One more simplified application would just be like, you need to simulate a kind of rubbery component. A lot of people who perhaps print RC radio cars, those little RC cars, they'll print their wheels in flexible PLA because it simulates rubber. For a costume application, such as, we're going to go back to the Iron Man example, any flexible component that you need that also needs to look machine-like. So let's just say like his cowl under his neck. So you still want to move your head. You'd probably print that in flexible PLA so you can move your head and not be not be Michael Keaton's Batman when he's just so yeah, that's actually a pretty useful application.
Okay,
and,
so we've got some components. I think some components coming up here next in your
so we have some
here.
Yeah, so this is actually the crystallized. This is the PETG, and as you can see, these are machine parts, and they're able to easily withstand great stress as well as sterilization. So that was just kind of introducing what.
Yeah, you can actually see the texture of it as well. Looks different, doesn't it?
Yes. All of these, each of these will probably have a different texture. So once again, they all operate differently within the machine.
And the next one is one of my favorites. I love this.
Yeah. That's the TPE is that flexible filament. So that's the acronym for whatever materials or components that is used to make that mixture of plastic. So yeah, no, literally, like I said, we're printing shoes. We're printing shoes at this point. We're printing clothes. I mean, we're printing on fabric. We're printing fabric. But yeah, so that's a visualization of how flexible the flexible filament is. But once again, you do need specialty parts in your machine to use that effectively and get that kind of print. But it is pretty incredible.
Is that material can be more expensive, Cynthia? Is because of its properties?
Yeah. So the specialty properties are going to be a little more expensive. The ABS, the more sturdy filament's going to run about $5 more than the PLA, the standard. PETG is probably the same as the ABS, but this one's going to run you almost $40 a roll, I think. Prices are coming up and down, pretty constantly. But yeah, it's pretty incredible. There's also, Korea just got approved. There's a new filament that you can print with that's actually, because of all the medical applications we've had to use it for, as well as just they use 3D printing so much in the medical field. There's an FDA approved pre-sterilized PLA. Like, it's pretty incredible that it's like literally medical grade PLA FDA approved. So it's just coming from Korea right now. But I don't know, I'm just really passionate about it, and so
I like to see it. But I'd be curious to see how many 3D printers and what sales of 3D printers have been like during lockdown. With places like across the States, across the UK, across the world. With people at home thinking, what am I going to do, or can't get hold of things? Then they think, well, I could just make things. Creatively or for need. Now, here we are. Here's our favorite guy again. Here's
our favorite example again. So yeah, once again, this is when you're gonna start printing. Of course, you have your machine, but I mean that's only like 20% of the process of creating your model. So this is what is called a slicer program, and that's kind of the fun term. But a slicer essentially it slices the layers of your model, so it kind of reads your model. It comes in as an STL, so you're going to upload the STL file, which is your 3D model. And
I'm nodding as if I know what you're talking about. Yes, of course, an STL file.
It's so all good.
What's an STL file then?
An STL file. Acronyms elude me constantly, but an STL is essentially just it's the blueprint file. That's it. It's the blueprint file. Whenever you're thinking about the STL, it's just your model. It's just your model file. It's just the raw model but the printer can't read it yet. So that's kind of the point of the program, which I use Cura. Cura is my slicer, and so what the program does is it slices all those layers, because it's coming in as just a round, solid model. And so your printer only reads in layers. So your printer has to slice, or at least read this, and convert this model into something it can read. So that's the purpose of Cura. So you definitely, Cura is part of the package of your 3D printer. These are downloadable free source programs, which I'm still blown away that these are free use open source programs that you can download and just play with, even if you don't have a 3D printer. But yeah, so in this program, you can actually operate your 3D printer as well. You can set the speed, so this is kind of the brain of your printer, honestly, because you can set the speed, the temperature, the height of your layers. There's just so many options that I can't even get into. It'll take me 3 hours, I promise you.
I think when we get the point that the versatility and the capability is vast, isn't it, as well? So
totally.
What's going on here? This is the 3D render, is it?
Yeah, this is another. I mean, it's basically the same file as Iron Man. And let me get my helmet real quick, because it'll be a better example of what's going on with. Okay. This is a different program, though.
Yeah, so she's fallen on the floor, fallen off the back here. I hope it wasn't anything we said.
So the reason I brought
you have your Iron Man headphones as well.
Oh yeah, I do. I'm a big fan. So the reason I brought in Hulk is because I had to use this technique to create this kind of helmet. So the helmet, or Hulk perhaps, is too large. The model itself is just too big for my print bed, or at least what I want to print is too large for my tiny little print bed. So I'll put it in a modeling program such as Mesh Mixer, because that's the one thing about Cura, unfortunately, is you can't really manipulate the model in that program. So you have to actually go into an animation 3D program to do that if you ever need to edit a model. Cura is only essentially readying your model for the machine. So Hulk, as you can see, let's just say I want to print a big Hulk, but I have to, because of that, I have to do that in small pieces. So I can go in and only print, slice his arm, his arm is put his arm on a separate plane. And so I can, this is essentially how I'm going to break down my model, kind of similar to here. So I have, you can see this is where I would have had to slice the helmet just to create only this piece to print, and then this piece, and then break it down into smaller pieces. So that's that would be Mesh Mixer. So that's the modeler program. And then the other one, the little dinosaur, you can also create those little trees that are coming out of the print bed, kind of supporting the dinosaur.
Yeah.
That's actually, anytime you're working with a large scale model like that, it has to be supported somehow on the print bed.
I get the point though, because of course if you're building that, it has to build up something of a strength underneath. Otherwise the whole thing's just going to topple over, isn't it?
Yes, it's going to topple over during the print process. So this is another application for the modeling program, is creating those custom supports. You're going to remove them later. So I think, let's just say I have this crown. This is another 3D printed piece. Oh, I keep forgetting where my camera is.
Yeah,
thanks.
That's useful. Yeah, that's amazing. So how long did that take you to do?
This one was actually lucky. I got the raw print actually from a friend who is a modeler for Bethesda games, and so So she created this model. This one took about 30 hours for this figure. So you can also do these little figures. But I guess he's a better example because we had to put in custom supports under his book and under his knee just to support that while the printer is running only on the like Y or Z axis. So the printer is only running on the Z axis. So it needs something to support it as it's running. You know, it needs support.
Yeah, of course. It's just going to collapse, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll collapse. So we remove those later. But it is part of the print process, and you can render those separately in the program, like the Mesh Mixer modeling program. So that's one very important thing to understand. You can't really just jump into 3D printing, definitely, but there are a lot of elements that you kind of have to understand to get it successful.
I mean, have you ever thought of doing? I mean, you're brilliant at this. It's called explaining it. I mean, have you ever thought about doing tutorials online? I mean, you know, there'll be so many people be clamoring, you know, for your expertise. You know, and kind of going through it yourself. You know.
I didn't really think about it because there are a few like really amazing resources online. But I'm glad that I'm really good at explaining this because it is really wild.
Even I'm understanding it.
That's amazing.
So what is it we've got here?
This is actually chainmail. So you can 3D print chainmail now, which is pretty incredible. And you can print it not as individual links anymore. You can print it as a solid chainmail piece. Like you can print it in like 8x8 squares of ready-made chainmail. And as you can see, it's pretty incredible for costume applications and super lightweight because, you know, traditional chainmail is aluminum and heavy, or steel and heavy. But as you can see, it's just a specialized model. That's the raw file that was just multiplied several hundreds of times to get chainmail. And those are just basic links. I mean, it's
But the time saving in this as well is remarkable, isn't it? Because the amount of time you're saving, if you were to piece all that chainmail together, it'd be a laborious, painstaking task. Yet you just set the machine running and out pops this.
I know it's pretty incredible to think about that. I really don't know if films and people will really fall back on traditional ways of making it. I mean, we will not lose the art, but I think it would just be definitely more economical. We might start seeing plastic chainmail a lot more in films and television, like 3D printed.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense, doesn't it? It's time, isn't it? And also the cost. Mm-hmm. The next one here. Oh wow, what's this?
This is, you can 3D print on fabric, which I have experimented with. So this is similar, not similar to chainmail, but kind of the same concept. So I want a specialty design on my fabric, whether it's those 3D elements that look like dragon scales or something. So what you do is you have your basic print. So I have the raw file that just has little spikes on it. So after the first like 2 or 3 layers, what I'll do is I'll pause my print and I'll lay down a layer of this mesh fabric, and then I will print on top of that, finish my print on top of that. And because the plastic is hot and gooey when it's printing, it'll actually like close the pores in the fabric, if that makes sense. And so once you finish printing, you can pull it off and you have a sewable component at that point. So so it has a lot of really amazing applications. But however, I did learn, do not use polyester fabric for that because it will melt under the nozzle because it's plastic and everything's gonna melt. So just be trial and error.
Melting mess at the end of it, like.
Yeah, I've done it trial and error.
Some more elaborate pieces here, very delicate pieces.
Yes, this is a great 3D print. Once again, talking about the community, this is a great influencer to follow. This is Cassandra New, I think is her name, but her online screen name is Lume Cluster, Lume Cluster, and she's been featured on Tested with Adam Savage because of her printing. As you can see, it's super delicate, and she does all of the modeling herself. This was actually a armor piece that she made for the voice actress Felicia Day. But yeah, so her work is pretty incredible to watch, and the gauntlets that she often makes are pretty I don't know. I guess I just wanted to end the presentation just pointing out, like, look at the amazing things people are doing, and really using these applications for it. The right image is actually the raw print. So that's the raw print, and then the right is the finished and painted and primed and all that jazz and lights. But yeah, she's pretty incredible to watch. I mean, Adam Savage gave her a blessing, so that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So this is the last one here. This is great, this piece.
It's amazing. This is another influencer that I really, really enjoy and recommend. This is her name is Spoon Makes. That's it. Spoon Makes. So she is an incredible printer and crafter. But the reason I brought up her pieces is that she is very unique in her application of the 3D prints, because she uses lights to backlight a lot of her printing. So she'll use that PETG, or that crystallized print that we were talking about, and because it prints relatively clear, she can actually use it. Use it to backlight and print like it's like lenses. So I really like how she applies 3D printing and different properties with lighting and technology. She also has created a portable fog machine for costumers, which is really incredible. It's only about like this big, but it has an incredible output for costume applications. So yeah, she's pretty incredible. I forgot her actual name, but Spoon Makes is pretty.
Spoon Makes is how to find it. That's fantastic. I here we are. This is your
oh yeah! Oh, that was nice. Yeah, Nick, that one, man. I see that. But yeah, so yeah, 3D printers are really.
We mentioned it earlier, with your, with the masks and everything, the visors, and really making a difference. So good on you for doing that. And so many people would have been able to stay safe thanks to you. So
yeah,
they would have done. Absolutely. When I first heard about what you were doing, I thought, what a great idea to take that skill you have. Compared to the other things you do, printing of visors, pretty simple.
Yeah, right. I know. Compared to everything else, it's pretty simple.
This isn't my only foray into 3D printing. That is me.
Love it. Did you get the body scan?
I did a 3D body scan. I hosted a film about Star Wars toys called Toy Empire. That's going to be going out around the world in a couple of months' time. But I was scanned. It was a very weird experience.
Right?
The 3D thing, yeah.
I was about to say I've done that as well, and it is pretty wild. But so you got into the giant
the lights go around. You have to keep it focused. You ruined it. You screwed it up. You've got to do it again. And the guy says, "Yeah, don't move." And the director got me in all these different positions. And it was a very weird experience. But to see that kind of come out of the printer, I mean, so I had a very kind of modicum of experience seeing it made. But what you do is just absolutely stunning. So thank you for sharing that with us, Cynthia.
Thanks.
Everything you've done. Do we have any questions for Cynthia? I think we've got any questions. We're going to throw any questions your way. Here we go.
Hi, Jonathan. How much do models you can print cost, and how much does the plastic cost? The plastic, super cheap, Jonathan. Seriously, the plastic. Hold on, let me go right back.
I think some of the more expensive stuff, I think Jonathan, Cynthia was saying, was $40 for a roll of that specialist stuff. But here we go. Look at the size of it. I didn't realize it was as big as it.
All right, I'm back. So this is your basic plastic. It comes in a roll, like a sewing, like thread roll, and it's only about, for the PLA, it's literally about $20, and you can get some really good PLA. So $20, you can print. I printed this with $20. Literally, you can print about a pretty full scale helmet for about $20. So it's super economical. Handsome Jack here from Borderlands. I think he was only like half a roll of PLA, so $10. Like literally, I mean, you can print an amazing array of figures. If there's a model for it, if you can make a model for it, then you can print it. And I think it's really, honestly, I don't really feel the need to buy figurines anymore.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I didn't expect you to say that printing that helmet was $20.
Yes, you can print parts of a printer on a printer, and they will be effective and usable. I think that's what's also pretty incredible.
You're self-sustainable. I mean, you needn't ever go out again. I mean, you can literally recreate the entire world in your house.
It's so true. How does the cast of different materials compare? I mean, it's pretty economical. The most expensive filament roll would be about $40, and then the cheapest is $20. So it's still pretty economical, even for the that flexible rubber filament. Oh, hi. I didn't bring him in here. But yeah, so it's still within the range of only $40 for the more expensive filaments, like the flexible. So it's still pretty incredible. With the dissolvable material, do you seal it somehow once finished? The dissolvable, I haven't personally found an application for the dissolvable. I guess you can seal it just so it's not it doesn't biodegrade in your hand, but I feel like most people would probably use a dissolvable just because they need something that would, of course, melt away. I think it's just they chose that for the application, that it will perish or it will dissolve away. I don't know. I can't really think of any applications off the top of my head. So that one, I don't know if you would seal it. I think it's just made to dissolve. When you have finished printing, how do you clean the machine? Yes. Once I talked about nylon filament earlier, which is just a different higher temperature plastic. And so you can clean the plastic residue out of your machine using other filaments in a sense. The other cleaning methods would just be your basic machine cleaning methods, like oiling it, brushing out any plastic little pieces that might be stuck or something. So yeah, cleaning it's not too bad, but I think it's just the maintenance that can be the most daunting, because you're going to have to understand machine parts, electronics. You're going to have to get in and dirty and actually understand circuit boards a little bit. So it can be a little daunting. It can be a little daunting, but it's not that bad. I mean, if I can do it.
So in theory, you had to change a load of stuff. Here you go. Could you build an A-ring out of chocolate? In theory, you can build anything, I suppose.
Pretty incredible. You can print with chocolate. You can print. I mean, I'm not saying you can throw chocolate in my machine, but you can print. There are printers for chocolate and other applications.
Really?
I haven't. Yeah.
Well, actual chocolate. You can put chocolate in there.
Yeah. Okay. This is a really, really bad example, but a couple years ago, there was a French chocolatier that literally they made the bust of Benedict Cumberbatch in chocolate.
Well, why not? And why not?
Why not? That was 3D printed. That was 3D printed in chocolate. It was, yeah. But anyway. So yeah, you can 3D print chocolate with my wonderful, wonderful, weird example.
But I bet that takes a lot of cleaning out afterwards, doesn't it? You can't then go straight back in with plastic, can you, after that? Surely it has to be cleaned out.
I don't even think that's a plastic machine. I think that's a very, very specialized machine. I genuinely don't know. I just know that it is possible. I mean, you can print a Cumberbatch out of chocolate. You can build an A-ring.
If you can do Doctor Strange, out of chocolate, you can make an A-ring.
You can do an A-ring out of chocolate.
So feel free to do one, Jonathan, and let us see it.
Yeah. How long did it take to print the armor or helmet? Oh, that took a few days, actually, just because each piece of this took about 10 hours, just because I did actually need supports. Because some of the pieces kind of indent, or it's not a straight model. So it did need supports and things like that. It took about, I would say, 5 days total. She has a lot of little spiked elements and things like that on her. So,
but it's that attention to detail that obviously with cosplayers like yourself, you have to stick to, don't you, to make sure you're absolutely right.
Oh,
have you ever got so far with one and gone, no, that's not worked. And then 90% done, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, I've thrown away many prints.
Can you reuse the plastic? I mean, can you reuse once it's started to? You can, yeah.
There are certain people you can send bad prints or old filament to, and they will melt it down and recreate the. I mean, it's just it melts, remelts, reforms. So yeah, you can send old pieces to people.
Excellent. So it can get reused. So what's the next big thing for you? Are you allowed to tell us? Can you tell us what you're working on?
Oh, not for the company. Just
No, okay. Well, for yourself.
Yeah, all I can say is just be on the lookout for Avengers Campus. There's a lot of cool stuff. But but for me, I mean, I'm just working on Mysterio from Spider-Man Far From Home. That's my personal project.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's I just take it day by day. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know. I'm stuck in a time loop right now.
I don't know. Every day, like, what day is it? I don't know.
Yeah. So that's why it's like, what is your plans? And I'm like, I don't know. Sit in my house.
I think that we all would like to reboot 2020 and start again. Let's try and reload it and start again. Well, Nick, I mean, what a great panel with Cynthia.
2020 really needs to be rebooted, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We all need to go into a time warp and come out in 2022.
Yeah. Come back then. We'll just do
a time machine. Can you 3D print time machines?
In theory, you can. Okay, let's just say you can 3D print a TARDIS. I mean, I don't know how functional it is, but you can 3D print one.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind. No, this has been a great panel. In fact, we actually have come through it, really, really quickly. I think really all of the information that we've got out there that will encourage people to, give it a try. I think one of the things that obviously comes immediately to mind is, it's affordable, but yes, it's going to take time for people to learn how to actually, apply all those programs. And then I think people who are thinking that it's a quick and easy solution to make something are fooling themselves, because you're taking the time that it takes to physically make something, whether it's molding it, making a mold and putting a material into the mold. Instead, you're using that time to learn how to operate different programs and how different programs are going to have to interface with each other. And clearly, though, once you've got that knowledge, it's going to seem much simpler. It's like doing these broadcasts. When we first started, it seemed kind of daunting. And how does this work? And am I choosing the right program? Is it the right platform? But once you've got a formula in place, then you know where you're going. I'm guessing that's true, Cynthia.
Yeah, that's totally true. I think it took me a while to really get to it took me a little bit of time to get to the point where I could print functional costume pieces, just because trying to understand the program, but also understanding all of the little quirks with the machine itself, because I think that's the other part, is that the machine, because it's such an exacting science, that there are so many variables that can really, like I said, I've thrown so many prints away just because the machine, I can have all of the settings right in my program, but the machine itself, it just doesn't want to operate. So it happens, but you have to have patience. And you're right, like, even though it might seem like the magic ticket, there are still so many other elements that you have to be patient with, in time.
Yeah, and also you touched very lightly on scanning items. I had considered, for example, I've got this Yoda back here, actually.
Yeah, he's speaking.
Here, which is made from the original, reverse engineered from the original molds in a physical.
Nice.
The idea of being able to pose that and then scan it and make more versions is very appealing. But then you've got the question of, where do you go, or how do you scan something in the real world?
Yeah, it's true. There are some small scale scanners, but of course, like David said, he went into the scanning room or whatever. But yeah, you're right. Like, who has access to that kind of giant, large scale technology? That's the tough part.
Yeah, and when you're going into a room like that, does it actually work? I mean, I remember someone scanned me back in, I don't know, 2014 when I was in Germany, and I kept waiting for the scan to arrive, and somehow, something went wrong and it didn't really work. It's I know stuff has changed a lot. I think there's even a program out there now that claims that you can scan things with your cell phone, which seems pretty cool. Yeah, things. Well, I just read it yesterday, actually. It sounded unlikely, but, you know, and the program's free. So, you know,
Sounds
good way to find out what doesn't work and what does. But
sounds like Black Mirror to me.
Yeah, well, so Cynthia, thank you for you know, for coming on. Thank you once again for all your expertise. It was a great panel, and I'm really looking forward to whatever it is that we talk about next time.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, exactly. Always loved connecting with you guys. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cynthia. We could do another 2 or 3 hours easily, I'm sure.
I know. That's why I was literally like, oh my God, I have 10 minutes left.
You've been great at not just giving information, but you've been a great collaborative person who has helped me so much in getting these things started. I really appreciate that.
I really appreciate that, Nick. Thanks.
Okay, so take care, and I will see you again next time. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the panel, you can rewatch anytime over the next couple of weeks, wherever it is that you're watching it right now. Please consider becoming a supporter of the Folly Star Foundation, because these webcasts, these StarNet webcasts, were started to thank our patrons who support us through this terrible economic crash that COVID has imposed on us. You know, we're here in the Caribbean where we're dependent on tourists, and there haven't been any for the last 6 months, and may well not be any in any significant number for the foreseeable future. So you can be a patron by donating as little as $5 a month through our Patreon page. There's the link for it right there. And as a Patreon supporter, or someone buying stuff through the museum's sales on Facebook, you can do that for as little as $5 a month, and it gives you access to all the live patron shows as well as these recorded ones. All income goes to keeping our museum, where I'm sitting, afloat, and the foundation as well going, as we encourage everyone to follow their dreams and live extraordinary lives. This is that Yoda guy, Nick Maley, saying have a great week, and may the Force expand your horizons and be with you always.